Girls Mean Trouble. Chapter 13. Shockwaves. Every muscle in my body tightened up. I didn't wait another second, just scrambled back up the rocks, ignoring the pain in the soles of my feet. Ran for ages along the road, then went down a walkway on the other side of Mum and the others. "Been running, Ollie? You're all puffed," said Mum. "I've just come from over there," I said, pointing in the opposite direction to where Sam and Daisy were. "It's really brilliant. There are rock pools and everything. Let's move places, shall we?" "You're joking, Ollie. This is perfect," said Mum in a lazy voice because she was half asleep in the sun. "You've not said anything about our castle," called Charlie. "Look, don't you think it's mega? We just need to fill out the moat now." I glanced along the beach. They were about a minute away. There was nothing I could do. I suddenly understood what it meant when people talked about burying your head in the sand. Pity I couldn't bury my whole body. "Oh, here they are at last," said Frankie, sitting up. "We thought you weren't coming," she called out. "Can you pass me my sun cream, Ollie? It's in that bag." "I'm going down to the sea." "Just pass Frankie her sun cream, Ollie," said Mum. "Hello," said Peter to Mrs. Cotterill and her sister. "You left your stuff in the car. Do you want a hand?" Mum must have suddenly sensed that something was wrong. "Where are Sam and Daisy, Pammy? Is everything all right?" "I think that should be our question," said Sam's mum a bit snappily. I was about to creep off when Frankie asked me to pass her sunglasses. I started rummaging in the back bag that she was pointing at. "Sorry," said Mum, shielding her eyes from the sun and looking bewildered. "I thought two of the children weren't well," went on Mrs. Cotterill. "Sorry?" said Mum again, sounding puzzled. "The last we heard, Frankie and Rory were unwell, so this beach trip was off." "I don't understand. Who did you hear that from?" "From you." "I'm afraid I'm really not following this." "Just tell us what on earth you're talking about," said Peter, sounding a bit stroppy. I shot him a quick look. We all did. It was very rare for Peter to get riled by anything or anyone. "At 7 o'clock this morning, we received a phone call from you, Sue, to say that Frankie and Rory were unwell, so you were going to have to cancel today's arrangements." "But I... Hold on a minute." That was Peter. He was scanning our faces. Mine, Frankie's, Charlie's and Rory's. He settled on mine. "Do you know anything about this, Ollie?" I had a split second to decide whether or not to come clean. And in that split second I heard Sam's smarmy voice in my mind. "I'm going to get her to kiss me." "No, don't know what you're talking about." I managed to hold Peter's gaze until he moved on to Frankie. "What about you?" She shook her head and I saw suspicion in Peter's eyes. He thinks it's her. "Charlie, Rory, anything to say before we pack up and go straight home?" I'd never heard Peter sounding so angry before. Inside my head an argument raged. "Just own up. I'll only get punished. You deserve it. But I might be able to get away with it. The longer it goes on, the worse it'll get. It can't be worse than having to put up with Sam and Daisy." "So you're prepared to ruin the rest of the holiday for everyone?" "I can't own up now. Not in front of them all. I'll do it as soon as I'm on my own with Mum or Peter. Promise?" "Promise." "Well, Charlie?" Peter repeated. "What exactly are you saying, Dad?" asked Charlie, standing up to her father in her usual way. "I'm saying that Daisy's mum received a phone call this morning at 7 o'clock and it was not made by Sue or me. So which one of you four is going to own up?" "I didn't get up till 7:45, so it wasn't me," said Charlie. "What time did you get up, Rory?" Everyone knew that Rory was always first up. "I don't know. I didn't even look at my watch, but Ollie wasn't in bed when I woke up." All eyes were back on me. "Look, I've told you it wasn't me." Mum suddenly took charge of the situation. "Pammy, all I can do is apologise profusely. Don't worry, my dear, we're just along there. You can see our mauve parasol, can't you? It's the tall one." "Yes, thank you. Just give us a few minutes." There was a silence when they'd gone. Then Peter said, "Right, I'm going to give you all one more chance to own up, and if no one does, we go home. Simple as that." There was another silence. "And I mean home, not holiday house." He delivered this last stab in a low voice that made goosebumps come up on my arms, even though the sun was shining. I glanced at Frankie. A tear was running down her face. "I did it," she said softly. Charlie, Rory, Mum, Peter and I all stared at her wide-eyed. I couldn't bear it any longer. Frankie must have been so desperate not to end the holiday. She was prepared to take the blame for something that she hadn't even done. "No, I did it," I said. I looked Peter straight in the eye. "I know I've done a terrible thing, but I just couldn't stomach the thought of those two being with us for yet another day. That's it all. Sorry. You can punish me, Peter, but please don't make us all go home." Peter and Mum looked at each other, then Mum spoke to Charlie and Rory. "Why don't you two go ahead and fill up your moat with water?" Without a word, they grabbed their buckets and went off. I was about to be blasted into oblivion, and yet when I look back on this moment much later, all I could remember was the way Charlie and Rory had looked so odd going down to the sea, their two thin, tense bodies walking close together to try and ward off the awful atmosphere. "I trust you're not protecting Frankie, Oliver," said Peter. I think that was the first time he'd ever called me Oliver. It was like a double shock because I suddenly realised that he really didn't know which one of us had done it. Frankie stayed silent. I shook my head and looked down. When I looked back up again, he was peering into Frankie's face as though to sniff out any lies that might be lurking inside her head. There were lots of tears on her face, but she didn't make a sound when she was crying. I think I liked her more in that moment than I'd ever liked her before. She could have easily thrown a big wobbly and screamed at her dad that it wasn't her, but she didn't say a word. I had to put her out of her agony. "I got up really early and went outside with your mobile, Mum. I took it behind the hedge on the other side of the road and I imitated your voice and told Daisy's mum it was all off because of Frankie and Rory being ill." "But why, Oliver?" said Mum in a quiet voice. "I mean, it's a bit drastic, isn't it? Why didn't you just tell me and Peter that you'd be happier if we didn't have Sam and Daisy for the day?" "Because you'd think I was stupid and you'd tell the others and then Rory would take the mickey, and anyway you wouldn't have been able to cancel it at such short notice." "Well, that's probably true, but at least we could have made sure we didn't make any further arrangements. We're all on this holiday together, Oliver. Everyone has a right to be happy." "Yeah, but I would have been outvoted. I knew I was the only one who didn't want them around." "You weren't, actually." Frankie had finally spoken. I couldn't believe my ears. I wanted to know what she meant, but Rory was racing back from the sea, shouting something and waving his arms frantically. We strained to hear. "Quick! Sam's fallen off the lilo!" I shot up and set off full pelt. "Oliver, come back here," I heard Peter's angry voice. "You're not getting off that lightly." "For goodness sake, he's only fallen off the lilo," shouted Mum crossly. But I had recognised the panic in Rory's voice. "Sam can't swim," I heard Frankie tell them. Then I was too far away to hear another word. Chapter 14. The Kiss. I ran and ran, the wind drumming in my ears, the roar of the sea making my legs go faster and faster. As I got nearer, I could see the lilo, but no Sam. Charlie was standing by the edge, ready to direct me. "Over there!" she screamed, pointing to the lilo. "Tell Mum to phone for an ambulance or something," I called over my shoulder as I kicked my way as far as I could into the sea, then plunged into the fastest crawl stroke I could manage, swimming hard till I knew I must be out of my depth. I was getting nearer and nearer to the lilo, yet Sam was nowhere to be seen. I dived under, keeping my eyes open. The sea stung my already sore eyes, but I didn't care. Sam was under the lilo. His face looked strange. I grabbed hold of him under the arms and pushed him up to the surface, then realised that his weight was making us both go under. I had to get him on the lilo. "Sam," I said breathlessly, "can you hear me?" His eyes were closed and his head was lolling. I was terrified. What if... I couldn't bear it if... He was too heavy to put on the lilo. I knew then that I hadn't time to do anything other than struggle to the shore as best I could. I'd practiced life-saving lots of times in school swimming lessons, but this wasn't the same as trying it out on a partner who floated obediently on the surface, hanging lightly onto you while you swam easily to the side. I used all my strength to try to keep Sam's head above water as I struggled along. You could hardly call it swimming when I did. I was kicking my legs violently and shoving the sea with my shoulders and head. I swallowed loads of water along the way and thought I was going to be sick. I could hear lots of people having fun swimming and splashing nearby, but they didn't notice me in my little terrifying world, and I couldn't shout for help because I needed all my energy to stop Sam from going under. I felt sick and I thought my arms were going to drop off. "Please don't die, Sam," I spluttered, though I knew he couldn't hear me. "You can kiss Frankie as much as you want, just please don't die." And suddenly my feet were touching the bottom and I could stand, except that I couldn't because my knees were crumbling. Someone was yelling and running towards me. It was Peter. "Hang in there, Ollie! You've done brilliantly!" He was really panting as I dropped Sam into his arms. Another man was instantly at our side. Between them they carried Sam onto the shore. "I think he's going to need mouth to mouth," the man said to Peter. "I'm not sure. Neither am I. You're supposed to clear the airways first, aren't you? Said Peter. I saw that he was shaking. I'll do it, I said, kneeling over Sam and taking charge. This bit I could remember well. Peter got out of the way quickly. I put 2 fingers under Sam's chin and tipped his head back. Right, what's next? Check breathing. Look, listen, feel. Count to, is it 10? Not breathing. Okay, block nose, mouth to mouth, 5 breaths. Keep calm, Ollie. A small crowd was gathering. I was vaguely aware of toes clenching the sand near Sam's head. Nothing else. Take pulse at Adam's apple. Yes, a pulse. But he was still unconscious. What now? Keep doing it. 20 breaths. Check pulse. 20 breaths. Check pulse. Until help arrives. You're doing well, Ollie, said Peter, his voice still shaking. Sam's mum had arrived on the scene. I could hear her wailing. I had no idea he'd gone into the sea. Mum and Daisy's mum were trying to calm her, but they didn't sound calm themselves. Don't worry, Pammy. He'll be all right. There were other voices too, but they were a blur. My head was swimming. I thought I couldn't last much longer. After every breath I gave, Sam, I said, please live, inside my head. The ambulance is on its way. The pulse was still there. Was it my imagination or was it weaker? If anything happened to Sam, it would be my fault. I'd never be able to bear it. Nothing mattered anymore except getting my friend back. Surely someone will be here in a minute. And just at that very moment, Sam threw up a load of seawater. Then his chest shuddered. I sat back in a crouched position as he rolled over onto his side and opened his eyes. Oh, Sam! Cried his mother, dropping onto her knees beside him. As the ambulance man arrived with a stretcher, I stood up shakily. Someone's done a great job here, said one of the men. It was my brother, said Rory. His name's Ollie. Rory had tears in his eyes and was really shouting at the men as though they were deaf. Well, that's one brilliant brother you've got there, mate, said the ambulance man as he helped the other man roll Sam onto the stretcher. He's my brother too, came another voice. It was Frankie. She was suddenly beside me, giving me an enormous hug. I couldn't hug her back because I still felt too weak. And mine, Charlie called. Sounds like you've got a good bunch of brothers and sisters, said the ambulance man to me. Sam was trying to sit up. He looked totally confused and his eyes didn't seem to be focusing properly. All right, son, what's your name? Sam, he whispered. I'm his mother, said Mrs. Cottrell. We'll get Sam to hospital and check him over, said the first ambulance man. Don't you worry now, my dear. Then the man turned to me. What exactly happened, Ollie? He saved Sam's life, said Mrs. Cottrell, bursting into tears as we all set off. Peter's arm was around my shoulder and we both had shaky legs as we walked a few paces behind the stretcher. Mum was beside me on the other side. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. The 3 girls were walking behind with Daisy's mum, but Rory was walking beside Sam, telling him all that happened in a very loud, slow voice, as though the sea might have addled Sam's brain. Ollie, he suddenly called back to me. Sam wants you. I broke free from Peter and caught up with the stretcher. Sam looked up at me. I was glad to see his eyes were back to normal. In fact, his whole face was back to normal, except he looked funny without his glasses. Thanks for saving my life, Ollie. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't really say, oh, that's okay, as though I lent him 50 pence or something. Ollie, he was beckoning me to bend down, so I did rather awkwardly as I kept walking. I knew I'd got to kiss someone today. I just never guessed it would be you. An hour before, I would have happily throttled him for a remark like that, but now, for some unknown reason, I didn't care. I really didn't care. Chapter 15. Friends. It was 6 o'clock in the evening and Frankie and I were sitting side by side on a wall in the garden. All the others were inside the house setting up the score sheet for another tournament. Sorry about today, I said without looking at her. You've already said sorry, Ollie. You don't need to keep saying it. I know I've apologised to Mum and Peter, but I haven't apologised to you. I haven't said thanks either. What for? Taking the blame so we wouldn't have to go home early. It was the only way I could think of getting you to own up. What do you mean? Well, I know my dad, and today it was pretty obvious that unless one of us owned up, we were in for some kind of awful punishment. I knew you were too nice to let me take the blame. She smiled at me. It was one of those really genuine smiles that I'd seen her giving Sam. This time yesterday, I was a stupid, lovesick teenager, and that smile would have sent me up to 47th heaven. But today, everything was different. It was impossible to explain, even to myself, what had changed. It was when I was struggling through the sea, desperately trying to save Sam, that I suddenly realised friendship was the most important thing, the only thing that counted. All I wanted now was to have Frankie as my best friend. I knew it'd take time, though. She was biting her lip, watching me biting my lip. There was so much I wanted to talk to her about, but I didn't want to say anything that would make her think I was a complete dork. When we were on the beach, you told Mum and Peter that I wasn't the only one who didn't want Sam and Daisy to join us today. Yeah, that was true. Why? You'll think I'm horrible. I won't, honest. She looked down and mumbled, I thought you fancied Daisy, and I didn't want my brother going out with someone as uncool as her. Oh, yeah, she'd really surprised me. Sorry about that, I said, feeling embarrassed about the way the conversation was going. Please tell me you don't fancy her. No, I don't. You see, I thought you fancied Sam, and... Fancied Sam? You've got to be joking. Whatever made you think that? I suddenly felt stupid. Well, you seem to be kind of talking to him and stuff. Talking to him? Since when did talking to someone mean you fancy them? I was just being friendly. Then I felt really stupid. Well, he fancies you, I mumbled. Yeah, I worked that one out. That was the other reason I didn't want those two around for another day. It was easy being friendly for one afternoon, but when Daisy wanted to both join us again, I felt suicidal. And there's another thing. What? You'll think I'm stupid. For the second time I assured her I wouldn't. Well, you see, those first few days on the beach were so fantastic, and then everything seemed to go wrong. You didn't seem to like me much anymore. Yeah, I did. It's just that Rory gets things wrong a lot, and he might have thought I fancied you or something totally stupid like that, so I didn't want to seem too, friendly. She looked at me carefully, and I knew I was going red, but there was nothing I could do about it. I wish I'd known that, Ollie. You see, I've been so happy to find that I got an absolutely brilliant brother, and I just wanted those first few days to go on forever. Then I heard you telling Rory that if you were dreaming about me, it must have been a nightmare, and I thought you didn't like me after all. I felt terrible when she said that. It's just to shut Rory up, honest. I believe you now. The trouble is, once we're all back home again, I won't get to see you very much, but you can see Sam whenever you like. And then there was Daisy. It was jealousy, I suppose. I didn't want those two around because I wanted you all to myself, simple as that. Suddenly, everything was clear. Frankie didn't fancy me or Sam, and she never had done. She just liked me as a brother and wanted me to like her as a sister. I felt really happy all of a sudden. Maybe one day she'd even want me as her best friend. Come on, Mum called out to us. We're about to start the tournament. You two are partners. Guess what, said Rory as we went in to join the others. What? Peter's going to ask Charlie's mum if Charlie can come over more often from now on. Frankie and I looked at each other and slowly broke into big smiles. It was such an obvious solution. What are you two grinning about? Asked Rory. You, I told him. We're thinking what a clever thing you just said. Rory looked at us suspiciously. No, really, said Frankie. It's the best thing that's happened this whole holiday, apart from Ollie saving the life of his second best friend in the world, she added. Second best? Who's his best friend then? Asked Rory, looking as puzzled as I felt. Me, of course, she told him. Then she turned to me and smiled. So when Rory gave me yet another of his big slow-motion winks, it didn't wind me up one little bit. In fact, I just cracked up laughing. And so did Frankie. Happy ending. Bye.